Yo, and welcome to another episode of Crate 808. And today I'm honoured to welcome a hip-hop writer and journalist, contributing editor at Hip Hop Connection, founder of Fat Lace magazine, and author of books such as Wiggers with Attitude, My Life as a Failed White Rapper, and the Book of Hip Hop Cover Art. Welcome, Andrew Emery. Hello, mate. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. It's a pleasure. It's been an appearance that's been seemingly years in the making. We've been finding it hard to get together, but it's finally great to be here. I'm loving the podcast so far.
Oh, thank you, mate. I really appreciate it. It means a lot coming from yourself, because as kids, we were following your writing. So, it's nice to have you on and just chat 90s hip-hop with us. It's really good.
Thanks, man.
I'm just going to kick off with our staple question that I'm sure you know, that we ask every guest who comes on. What's the least hip-hop thing you've done in the last 24 hours?
I'm going to guess I'm going to be the first to give this answer. It was shop for a wedding dress.
Okay. Was it for yourself?
It wasn't for myself, no. I mean, I'm a very open-minded fella.
Yeah.
But my wonderful and gorgeous fiancée, Emma, agreed to marry me 3 weeks ago. And so we're looking for a dress for her at the moment. And we're both kind of non-traditional, and she likes to take me along because I give quite honest feedback. I don't just go along and say, you look beautiful in everything, darling. I'll give her real feedback. So I'm not going to see the final dress. I think I'm out of the loop now. She's like, okay, you've helped me, now just back away and you'll see the final dress at the wedding.
I was going to say, isn't that, well, first of all, congratulations, mate. Second of all, isn't there a bad luck thing about like dresses?
Nah, man. I mean, if you're superstitious, but that's not me. Not me. Yeah, she'll know what kind of fabric I'm getting a suit made for me and her son. So, you know, we're gonna look pretty dipped that day.
Oh, nice. Can I just ask then, first dance, what's the song, mate?
This is the tricky one. We don't know yet. We haven't really got our song, but we were talking about a bit of Al Green the other day.
Oh, can't go wrong. Cannot go
wrong.
Not
sure which one yet, but maybe Al Green.
Okay, and the hip hop jams. What are the hip hop jams going to be saying at the wedding?
It depends on the DJ. The problem I've got is that most of my friends are DJs: Rob Percy, Yoda, Dan Greenpeace. But I want them all to have a day off, so I won't be relying on them. So I don't know. I've got to find a good DJ who can play some gems, but also play the wedding classics.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking forward to hearing about this, mate. Sounds really good. So if people out there who are listening, we have a younger listenership. We do have people in America. We have a very broad spectrum, Andrew. So I'm just going to tell them, for people who don't know, Andrew's credentials are very, very deep in the game from the 90s. And they can be summed up in this one excerpt from his excellent book, Wiggers with Attitude. I referred to it earlier. I do urge everyone, you know what, read the book and then come back to this, because the credentials can be summed up in this little passage. So this is Andrew talking about his love for hip-hop and where it took him. I got to play pool with the Beatnuts, ask Salt and Pepper where they brought their lingerie, and interview Lauryn Hill while she was in the shower. I got to walk out on an interview with a rude and monosyllabic Method Man, have Prodigy from Mobb Deep fall asleep on me, ask Jay Dilla over dinner a couple of years before his death what his name would be if he was a porn star, and that goes on and on. And Andrew, first of all, I want to dive into your love for the game, but I need to know about some of these stories that you just kick off with here. I mean, like Lauryn Hill in the shower and Jay Dilla about porn names. I mean, break it down to me, man.
Yeah, I mean, some of them sound more glamorous than they are. I mean, when Lauryn Hill was in the shower, I'm assuming in her place in America, I was in my mum's terraced house in Beeston, Leeds, on the phone to her. She was like, I'm running a little late. I'm going to do the interview, and she was like, and I was like, okay, fine. She's like, but I'm going to be in the shower. I was like, okay, well, you know, my imagination can work with that. That's a nice thought. Yeah, and the same thing with Salt and Pepper. We did a little Valentine's issue in Hip Hop Connection, and I think it wasn't even my idea. I think it was Andy Cowan, one of your former guests, who said, you know what? Why don't you do a thing about lingerie shopping with Salt and Pepper? I was like, Andy, you're a genius. But I mean,
that is a really good idea.
I got to do some really good interviews. I think because we were British, a British magazine, we had a bit more freedom to kind of be a bit silly and be a bit irreverent. Because especially when you're on arm's length of a phone call, you feel like you can just push it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So there was definitely an element of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the, mate, first of all, the Jay Dilla thing, like obviously a personal favourite of most people, but I love Jay Dilla. Tell me about that. You're over dinner talking about what?
Well, at the time, I kind of, you know, as well as working in Hip Hop Connection, which I'm sure we'll get to, I worked in another kind of industry, which was more top shelf for my 9-to-5 job.
Right.
So yeah, all the hip hop journalism was at night, and in the daytime I had a print publishing job. I took out Slum Village for dinner with their PR guy in London. You know, it was a nice relaxed chat. I said, I'm not going to do a formal interview. Let's just, you know, I'll record some of the conversation. You know, if you want me to turn the recorder off, I will. But they were like, no, it's fine, man. They found out what I did for a living, which was at the time I was editing Top Shelf magazines.
Right.
And they thought that was really funny. So we started talking about porn stars that they liked. And then I started saying, well, what would your names be if you were porn stars? And they were coming up with they were coming up with like Jizmarky and stuff like that. And I kind of made what I thought was a really bad mistake. I was kind of like, you could be like a gay porn star, Jay, and be like Gay D. And there was just a little moment of silence. And I thought, oh, fuck, man, what have I done? What have I done? And then they all creased out laughing. I was like, okay, phew, all right, they can take a joke. But,
That's good.
I kind of rode it back after that. I was like, oh, man.
You didn't ruin the dinner. Good work, man.
The atmosphere was still good after that. I was like, oh, no, man, what have I done? What have I done?
But isn't that lovely, mate? Isn't that lovely? You get to meet people that you really, really admire and they're not knobs. Like, it's like, oh, yeah, actually, you were all right. You were actually quite nice. Do you know what I mean?
It's always a pleasure. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, the ones that aren't nice stick out because the vast majority are lovely.
Yeah.
They're doing something that is for them quite boring and tedious. Often if they were American, they've landed on a flight like that morning on the red eye from New York. They're really tired. They've just checked into the hotel. They want to go to sleep. And, instead they've kind of got to do like 16, 30-minute interviews for the next 8 hours and trot out the same answers. And if they're nice, you kind of realize that it's taking a lot of work on their part. I know it's promoting their careers, but yeah, I wouldn't like to do that and have to kind of explain myself and explain what track 3 on the new album means. And, 10 journalists ask you the same question and you've got to come up with an interesting answer.
Absolutely.
I was kind of admired the ones who were really good about it and really thoughtful.
Yeah, professionalism as well, isn't it? But just, good to hear these stories about people that we've all revered as kids. And then you think, oh, it's really nice to know that Jay Dilla's actually quite a good laugh. Do you know what I mean? It's good.
And I tell you, going for a 90s artist, I mean, one of the ones I interviewed 3 times and was always a pleasure to interview was the RZA. And
oh, really?
Yeah, because he took his time. So, I mean, one time I was waiting to interview him and it was running 90 minutes late and I was like cussing the journalist before me, thinking, he's taking up all my time, man. I'm sitting here. And then it turned out it was nothing to do with the journalist. It's just that RZA likes to talk. And he was in his hotel room and I kind of sat down, let the tape go, and he just paced back and forth. And I was supposed to have like 40 minutes. I got like an hour and a half as well. And he could tell stories. He's really enthusiastic. He engages with you. He's not kind of looking into the distance board going, yeah, next. He properly thought about all his answers. It was a real pleasure every time. That's
brilliant, man. That's really good to hear. I mean, it's this kind of weird relationship you have, isn't it? Within 90 minutes, you talk to someone and you feel like, oh, wow, like we've got somewhere really deep with that. Or like, and it's better than just having them 30 minutes. And doing this podcast, sometimes I catch people here and there and it's like, you know what? I like it if you're a bit more casual and just chilled and a bit more in your own personal space, happy. And it's quite, you get a whole different feel from the interview.
I'd say it took me a long time to learn that as well, because I think when I first started interviewing rappers, I was such a fan and I was so new to it and so inexperienced. And I was just, oh God, I'm in the same room as, I don't know, Overlord X. I would spend my time at the start of the interview almost trying to impress them with my knowledge and be like, asking them some deep question that they'd go, oh, yes, so that B-side. And I realized in the end that was just me showing off and it wasn't a good way to get an interview rolling. You kind of have to be a bit more casual, because they've answered that question before. They want to, like when I interviewed Black Twang, once upon a time, we did a thing about football because that's one of his passions. He can relate to that, and that opens him up into talk about other things. So you kind of learn the art over time of interviewing. Not always that easy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And someone who's an absolute, I'm just a very rudimentary at this situation. It's just good to hear how other people have kind of found their way in it. So, podcasts, as you know, nowadays, they're just so huge now. It's like the next branch of broadcasting. You do hear people grow into these roles. Like, I'll stick with a hip hop podcast that I've been sticking with for 2 years. And after the second year, you're like, God, this guy's got really good. He's like really, really good at doing this. So there's a definite craft to it, I think, which is nice.
There is. And I think, people like yourself, people like Sean Taro. There's very few hip hop podcasts where I listen to because I often find the questions quite insulting or stupid. I mean, I don't know if you're a fan or not, but I can't listen to Rosenberg. I just feel like he doesn't know anything about hip hop. The kind of people who ask like Milk D, oh, so you've got a brother, right? That kind of thing. I just think, at least do your rudimentary research if you don't know who the artist is.
And I think this Sean Taro, as you were saying there with the Cypher, that's something I listen to now, and it's just inspirational. It's like, wow, it's just to have a conversation with someone and to bring stuff out of them that are like, that you would never get from like, just a rudimentary question. I love that. I think it's great. So yeah, everyone go out and check the Cypher, man. It's a brilliant podcast. But Andrew, man, to dive back in, because I have read your book, and I thought it nailed it. So many things for me, because being from Yorkshire and the Midlands and growing up, I grew up a little bit later than you, but I wasn't nowhere near as active in the scene as you were. Like, you actively wrote lyrics, that kind of thing.
Terrible lyrics. Yeah.
Terrible lyrics, but you know what? The book is brilliant because you get to read them and think, wow, this is like, I was just enamoured with the passion, to be fair, mate. This is the moment in the interview where my speaker decided to pack up, so I had to transfer Andrew onto my phone. So sorry if there's a bit of a change in audio, but you know what it's like. This is the trials and tribulations of the podcast world. Anyway, let's get back to it. For people who haven't read the book, could you tell me, how did you get into hip-hop? Like, what was your kind of baby steps into the whole culture?
Yeah, so a very musical family. I mean, not in terms of ability, but in terms of my dad was a big heavy metal fan, went to gigs. My sister was huge into music. We owned a mobile disco, so there was always music around. And then, it was like I think I just started secondary school in 1984. And literally in week one, someone passed me a tape of electro compilation. And that for me just changed everything. I think I was looking for a way to kind of quietly rebel, and go against what was my dad's musical taste in the house, which was, AC/DC, Saxon, Rainbow, stuff like that. And then, and also trying to ingratiate myself at school with kids I hadn't met before. And hip hop was kind of like the thing we kind of all coalesced around, it was quite small at the school. Although I found out in years to come that there was a couple of hip-hop fans I didn't know. DJ Ivory from the P Brothers was at my school. My man DJ Super Ricks, who works a lot with Rob Percy, they were at my school as well. So we had these like hip-hop fans, but there was like one or two per year. It wasn't like now where like everyone knows every artist.
Yeah.
Back then, it was so new.
That's mad. So what year are we talking there then?
So that was 84.
84. That's amazing to know that. So you were saying electro was the thing that got you into it, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was electro tapes, and then there was a really great club it's still there to this day, called Rock City in Nottingham. It was known for metal. It was known for goth. Yeah, student nights. But they had really good hip hop nights, and they had like DJs like Mongoose and Graham Park, and there was lots of breakdancers there. And the tapes of that would get passed around school as well. So people who'd been to it, which was probably, again, DJ Ivory, because he was going to those nights, and then the tapes would get passed around, and you just hear cutting and scratching, and you didn't have a clue what the songs were, because, I was 11, I had no money to go buy records, or there was no internet to look them up. So everything just seemed so alien, and for me that was exciting.
That's amazing, isn't it? Just to think, I mean, I don't know if many people would have known that electro kind of birthed a lot of rap, but just growing up, it wasn't evident to me. And then when you look back, you think, oh my God, the embryo that is that goes into house music and techno music, which I'm a big fan of, and then also goes into the culture that kind of shaped my childhood. It's just amazing that one little tape can do it, isn't it? It's amazing. What was the thing that you think rap or hip hop itself gave you that you couldn't find anywhere else at that young age?
Well, I think for me it was because I was at a very impressionable age, and I think it gave me a bit of identity and a bit of culture, because I think I say this in the book. There's no other music that has so many words as hip hop. Your average pop song or love song or R&B song will have a couple of verses, a chorus that repeats, but it might clock in at 16 lines, 20 lines in all. Whereas hip hop, you'd end up with 60. 80 lines, and all that stuff was about the world. It wasn't just about the idea of love or something. It was about the street, or it was about how good somebody was or what they were wearing. And I think when you're impressionable, as I was then, and in search of something that meant something, I felt like hip hop came ready prepared, But also, I just thought it sounded amazing. I mean, a lot of the early music going around when I was, 84, it wasn't super lyrical at all. It became that, from 86 onwards, and it hadn't been that at the start. But in 83, 84, a lot of you could listen to a tape getting passed around and hear a bit of scratching, hardly any lyrics, and just like what sounded like, early kind of house music or early kind of Chicago sound. It was just like, electronic music, but it was undeniably hip hop. I think when people say, oh yeah, it's always the lyrics that got me into it, it did to a degree, but it was just also the sound. I felt like I'd never heard anything like it before. And I hadn't, because, growing up in my house, I'd never heard a soul sample. I'd never heard funk. We heard metal. The first hip hop records I kind of recognised were ones that sampled metal. Like when KRS on your slipping or something like that, or dope beat. But until then, I was exposed to mostly white people's music, and then I heard something that for me, growing up in a really dull market town, that sounded like an absolutely brand new culture.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's how, like, if you look at Northern Soul, that's a weird just culture for me when I look at things. Wow, that's like a really black art form, is huge and is such predominantly white areas that are away from like multiculturalism completely. Yeah. And that always fascinated me growing up in the North. I thought it was amazing.
That's it. I think I said in the book that in my comprehensive school, which was probably about 800 pupils, and this is in the mid 80s, there was one black person. Obviously, they were subject to horrible racism for a start, but also it just shows you how the culture wasn't mixing in certain areas. If you moved to a different part of Nottingham where I grew up, then it was different. But where we were, it wasn't. So the only way I got exposed to something that wasn't just white bread culture was hip hop music.
And then when you say you were exposed to it, and then you obviously became a fan of it, and very avid fan, going by your book, absolutely obsessed, which is amazing to have, because that's kind of where I was with it. What do you think it was about yourself or like your creative impulses that made you want to go from, okay, I'm listening to this now on my headphones, to, you know what, I want to write, I want to spit? Like what do you think it was that made you do that?
I think I'd always had a little bit inside me of like, I wanted to learn songs and no lyrics. And, when I was a pop music fan, me and my sister, who's older than me, my younger sister, our friends, we would like learn dance routines to like pop music and stuff like that, whether it was like Kings of the Wild Frontier by Adam Ant or something as cheesy as Do the Hucklebuck. I was always trying to learn what the lyrics were of everything. So when hip hop came along, I was just in my bedroom with a hairbrush in my hand. And rapping into it. And eventually, I think it was when I started buying 12 inches, and I used to get instrumentals for the first time. So rather than just hearing the vocals on like John Peel on the radio or on an electro, I had instrumentals in my own bedroom with a record player. And so I just started practicing my own little raps. And often I would try and do other rappers' raps over other rappers' instrumentals to see if it worked.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, I'd have an LL Cool J B-side instrumental, and then I'd be trying to do some Rakim or something like that, obviously really badly. But,
yeah.
And then that just kind of graduated to, I don't know, I can't remember the first time I did it. I was probably tossing it off in a chemistry lesson, because that seemed to be the time for me. Science lessons where I wrote lyrics because I wasn't interested, Other stuff, English, fascinated. Science, not interested. Sit at the back, pretend I'm writing down notes, but write lyrics.
That's brilliant. I'd love to see them notebooks now, mate. Brilliant.
Oh man, I've still got some of my kind of early sixth form, late GCSE ones, and they're all rubbish, they're all nonsense. But yeah, I went through those out.
That's exactly, you shouldn't, man. No way. So just fast forwarding on to like you finding your kind of mates who are into rap as well, and then kind of forming little crews, which I always enjoyed. Tell me how you went from like believing that you guys can do something to the world of like, I don't know, pirate radio and stuff like that. Like, it feels like in the book you evolve quite quickly. It feels like, oh my god, they just kind of started and just did it, and the next thing they're on pirate radio. Like, how did it all turn out?
Well, I was kind of one of those people who had like lots of crews, mostly because I just enjoyed naming them. So I enjoyed that whole process of like, well, you can be this, you can be that, and then I'll be this, and then then in my notepad I'd dream up 7 alternatives for us, and then I'd write out the track listings for our first 10 albums.
That is amazing.
And production credits, and then the spin-off groups. So on the 5th album, there'd be some like new group appear. And then they've got their own album, and I would write the tracks out for that. And it was just this kind of flight of fancy that was going nowhere, because all these crews, none of us had equipment, and mostly we weren't even trying to do stuff. We weren't rapping. We just all liked hip hop. But then one day I'm on a project for school in a record shop, and I bump into a kid called Dan Goldberg, and I asked him a question about, it's supposed to be about his geography project, but I just said, do you like hip hop music? And he was like, yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, me too. But he already had a crew, but he also had equipment. He had a sampler that he'd borrowed from somebody. He had a scratch DJ, and Dan was producing. And that straight away, I kind of graduated from like, I would never have done anything on my own. I've never done anything with my old crew. But Dan and Martin were already doing stuff, and were looking for a rapper, and they were already doing pirate radio as well. So for me, it was almost like kind of like, a ready-made kit. A posse in kit form was like waiting for me when I met them. And like I had to do a rehearsal. I had to give them some lyric sheets. It seems so old-fashioned now, and then they were like, "Yeah, you're in."
Oh my God, imagine that. Imagine that. But to a kid, a rehearsal and lyric sheets were a huge deal. I bet you pored over them for hours and days.
I
You know what I mean?
I got terrible handwriting, and this was like 90 something, maybe 87, 89, I'm not sure. And I wrote them out in longhand, and and it was never about 16s back then. You never heard the phrase 16 in hip hop until I don't know, the late 90s maybe. Back then, you wrote 30 line verses, and you wrote 3 of them. So you're handing over these sheets of paper for these 6-minute long rap tracks, And it's like, Jesus Christ, who wants to hear that?
That's amazing, mate. That's amazing. So tell me the world of pirate radio then when you were there, because there's some of my favourite bits of your book are just those moments. So I'd love you to just tell me some stories on those, the pirate radio stations you were at.
Well, as someone with a kind of a relatively law-abiding and straight-edged childhood, when I met Greenpeace, as he later became, and Countdown, our other DJ, they'd already been involved in pirate radio, and they'd already been involved in a bust and had their equipment seized and stuff like that. And I just thought that was quite, romantic in the outlaw sense. And I was like, I want to kind of be part of that. Because growing up in the north, there wasn't a lot of hip hop on the radio. You didn't get Westwood up here. You didn't get, Fresh Start to the Week. You didn't get any of that stuff unless you were really lucky. You had a few tracks on John Peel, or sometimes Kershaw would play one hip hop track in a 3-hour thing. So I was always on trying to tune into the kind of the Bradford Pirates. So they had one called PCR, Paradise City Radio. If you listen to that, DJ Shock, shout out Jason. He's still doing his thing to this day.
Wow, brilliant.
Yeah. And I remember calling into his show and doing a little diss rap and stuff like that.
Nice.
And this was again in 88, 89. And then then we started doing a few bits of pirate around Leeds, and there was a couple of good ones that were trying to get legit. It was at that time when you felt like pirates, if they did the right thing, could get a license in the same way Kiss had and graduate. And it didn't really pan out like that. But
this is the thing where wasn't the government that said that we can give you a license if you just cease doing pirate broadcasting?
Exactly.
And then they didn't give you a license. It was like, okay.
And so we were on a couple of stations, but and then we did Leeds Student Radio, which was really good for a while. We were actually on the campus doing that. But the best ones were kind of the illicit ones, because it would get moved. Where are we this week? What time slot are we on this week? And people would drop by, so friends would come by and say, I've got these new Mo Wax tracks. Have you heard this label? I'm going to do a Mo Wax 30 minutes mix. And, Rob Percy used to come by, and guys from New Flesh for Old would come by, and we'd do freestyles and just do lyric sessions and stuff like that. And sometimes you're on at 8 till 10 at night, and you're getting a few phone calls and requests. And you're like, oh man, this is so exciting. Other times you're on 2 till 5 in the morning, and no one's listening, no one's responding to anything.
Man, yeah.
You're giving the phone number out 6 times an hour, and then no one calls. You're like, oh man, no one's listening. But do you know what? We're sat here. We might be having a little recreational smoke or a drink.
Yeah.
It beats work.
Yeah, exactly. You don't think about, I don't know, you just kind of get over the losses at that age, don't you?
So I was working in a casino at the time as a croupier, and I was working ridiculous hours. Sometimes I was finishing at 3 in the morning. Then I'd get a taxi over to this heroin addict's flat. That's what it looked like. It looked like one from the 80s kind of heroin adverts. Which Kathy Burke was in, wasn't she? I think one of those. It looked like that. And I'd get over there at 3:30 in the morning, and there'd already be 2 hours into the radio session, and I'd join in and stuff. It was quite. It's because we had such a passion for hip hop back then. I just wanted to be involved in it. I just wanted to stand in a room while we played records.
That's it, mate. You've got to break down this guy for me, DJ David Batty.
The man, the myth, DJ David Batty. We met a lot of characters, and there was some really there was some quite good professional DJs on some of the radio shows we did. Dream FM especially, because that was trying to go professional. They were doing mixtapes, mix CDs, and you'd see them in shops. And they had some good guys. But they also had DJ David Batty, and we were put on the kind of graveyard shift for a while after him. And I think he was a bit of I don't know. I don't think he had hot running water at his own house. I'll put it kindly. He was a nice dude. He was always mega stoned, and we'd turn up at the radio show. And like I say, he was in somebody's kind of, that kind of stereotypical flat, a bit like the one from. It looks like the one from People Just Do Nothing. That's what it looked like.
Yeah. And
we'd arrive, and then normally the former DJ's finishing off, doing his last shout outs, trying to cram in another couple of tracks and bite into your time. But DJ David Batty was never like that. He would normally, because it was somebody's flat and not his, he was making good use of the hot water. So he'd run himself like a 10-inch deep bath, put on like an album of prog rock where one side's 40 minutes long, and then get in the bath. And we'd arrive and he'd just be sat in the bath naked, while some while Tales of Topographic Oceans by Yes is playing out in its entirety on the thing. And then we'd start our show, be 20 minutes in, and he'd still be toweling off in the next room.
Oh, DJ David Batty. If you're out there, mate.
Plus he's named himself after the Leeds United player, David Batty.
Hold on. His name wasn't David Batty.
No.
He saw all the footballers in the first division and he went with DJ David.
Yeah, because Leeds fans are mad loyal, man. I mean, I'm not one, but they're mad loyal. And
yeah, true.
We asked him one time, "Oh, is that your name?" He was like, "No, I just like Leeds." And like, I saw David Batty recently, the real David Batty.
Did you?
In Leeds, yeah. He looked like he'd been working out. He looked like a bodybuilder.
Oh,
and I texted Greenpeace to say, I just saw David Batty in the street, and he was like, "Yeah, but which one?"
That's amazing. Just diverting then. Isn't like David Batty like really into fishing or something now? Is it him?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
He's been working out at the bankside just like whilst he's fishing.
If you ever have Greenpeace on, man, ask him because he's a big Leeds fan. So
okay, fair enough. But more than anything, if DJ David Batty's out there and somehow he's hearing this, please come on my podcast because even though it's prog rock, I'll talk yes for as long as you want.
There's no way he's alive. He drowned in a bath. That's got to be what happened to him.
To the tones of Pink Floyd's Echoes. There we go. Oh, poor bloke. Well, I needed to know more about that, but anyway, there we go.
That's cool, man. I'm glad you like that detail. It's those little stories that kind of make that kind of time so colourful for us. You know?
Absolutely, man. And these are the stories that I like from our childhoods, like mishearing lyrics. And by the way, this is one thing I have to big you up for because I never knew stuff like, when we used to go to shows, I started going to hip-hop shows after 99, really. So I was quite late into the game. And there'd be so much but, that kind of thing. Yeah. Just for where I'm from, that was, so that's a hip-hop thing. Reading the book, it was like, no, that's a dancehall thing, and it comes from a very Jamaican kind of thing that kind of infiltrated hip-hop and is just part of hip-hop now. So there's insight in the book, but there is these other moments of utter ridiculousness that are like, it makes you feel like, this could have happened to me. And there probably are things that have happened to me that are very similar. Do you know what I mean?
Like what?
Like what? I don't know. A meeting Guru in a nightclub. That was unbelievable. He was so pissed. But I loved him. He was great. Yeah. We met him in a club, and he was. We basically met him. And I was such a coward, but I was like, I need to say something. It's Guru. He had this big entourage of people around him, trying to wheedle my way through as a skinny little brown boy, just trying to go through, going, "Excuse me, can I just speak to Guru, please?" and these big guys sort of parted ways. And I was like, "Oh, here we go." And he was like, "Oh, how you doing?" He just gave me a big hug. And I said, "I'm really big fan of your work, and you've really inspired, like whatever." And left it at that. Mate, about 3 hours later in the nightclub, we were still there. This time he's had quite a few drinks, Guru has, and he spotted us from about 4 sofas away. There were all these sofas. It was in 10 rooms, this club called 10 Rooms. And he spotted us and he climbed over. He didn't go around the path. He climbed over the sofas, really pissed, just to come and talk to us. And he was just saying to us stuff like, because they were asking, "Guru, can you come up and do a freestyle?" And he just said to us, he was like, "Do you know what, mate?" He goes, it wasn't like that. Imagine if he was like that. Do you know what, mate? He was really English.
You have to laugh.
Exactly. And he just said to us, "You know what, these guys, they want me to go up there and do a freestyle. No one in here really knows hip-hop, but I know you guys know your thing, so I'm going to kick a little freestyle for you guys." And he just kicked a little freestyle for us. And we were like, "Oh my Lord, what is happening right now?" And then before he left, he decided to shake all of our hands. He shook my hand, like had this mad eye contact with me, this drunken eye contact with Guru. So, "Oh, mate, really nice meeting, yeah." And he's walking off, and he just came back, hugged me, put his mouth right into my ear hole, and he was like, "It's because of people like you I do what I do. I can see it in your eyes. You're amazing."
Man, that's amazing.
I know. I'd gone fully erect at that point. I was like, right, okay, this is the crowd. I'm only 19, but this is the best I'll ever do.
That's amazing, man. It doesn't get any better than that.
I know. And this is what I mean about your book, though. There's loads of these kind of stories in your book, which make me feel a little bit more like there's all these little stories in hip hop where you think, like, I just love hearing about these artists who are actually quite nice, or a bit dickheadish or whatever, but either way, it's quite nice to read these things. But if we're going back on track here, Andrew, we're going back on track after DJ David Batty and Drunken Guru, your time at Hip Hop Connection, I would love to hear, obviously, how you got into that, and then just your process, like how you figured you could, writing was the thing for you rather than rapping, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the rapping had kind of run its course by the time I started university. I mean, we kept on probably a couple of years longer than we needed to. We'd split up a little bit, and Greenpeace spent a year in Boston working for a radio show over there while I was at college, and we just weren't doing it anymore. I was one of those people who left university not really having a clue what they wanted to do. I'd always written in my spare time. I used to write for the university newspaper. I had like a weekly TV column and stuff like that, but I'd never written about hip hop. I just thought I'm going to give this a go. And the magazines I read at the time, Hip Hop Connection amongst them, but more so the mainstream newspapers like the NME. I just didn't really think that their hip hop writers knew what they were talking about. And like I say, this is not so much a Hip Hop Connection. This is more like New Musical Express had some great writers who I loved reading about. Indie writers who were so good they would make me read about music that I would never plan to listen to. I just enjoyed their words and how they brought it to life. But I always thought they shortchanged their hip hop readers, and they had some really great splashes. They did, I think, with the Cold Chilling tour. I always came away with it thinking, this is written by somebody who doesn't know what they're writing about. And I kind of thought, well, I can write a bit. I'm a super hip hop nerd, like many of us were, like you are, like so many of your guests are, where you know what track 3 on album 4 is, and you read the liner notes and you know who produced what. And then, you'd have somebody in the press just saying, oh yeah, on EPMD's first single, The Big Payback. And you'd be like, it's not their first single. Come on. No, it's minor, but come on. Because straight away you've lost me.
Yeah.
Because I just think this guy has got no insight. So I kind of wanted to be that guy who could write nicely but get it right and show that you understood. And I'm sure there was lots of us like that, and there are lots of great hip hop writers over the years who were probably exactly like that as well. But I think, as far as I knew, in Leeds at the time, I was the only kid trying to do that. And so I sent some stuff into Hip Hop Connection, just some kind of sample album reviews. My good friend Stephen Worthy, who was the deputy editor at the time, rejected me, as I always remind him every time I see him. He was just like, yeah, thanks, it's not for us. And I was just like, oh man, I'm not falling at the first hurdle. So the next time I just sent him straight to Andy Cowan. And well, I wouldn't say he gave me a call, because we didn't have mobile phones then, and we didn't have email. I'm assuming maybe he wrote back to me. I don't know what happened. Sent some smoke signals or a pigeon, something like that. And then he said, yeah, have a go at doing this for us. And then, I don't know, he seemed to just be on a curve. I mean, it was an album review, a long album review. Okay, can you do a 400-word gig review? Can you do a 600-word piece on somebody in Leeds or Yorkshire who's playing Leeds? And then, and then I started to get interviews. But I lived in Leeds, and all the interviews were in London, so I'd get the train down, and I'd, get to interview, let's say, Ronnie Size or somebody not quite mainstream yet, because I wasn't there. And Hip Hop Connection always paid really badly. Not the editor's fault; they just always had their hands tied.
Yeah. So
I would travel down, and the train would cost me more than I would get paid for the article.
Yeah.
It didn't matter, because I was like, I'm getting to meet Sada X, Akinyele, Funkmaster Flex, and Yvette Michelle one day, all in the same afternoon, and then got the train back. And like I say, the trip probably cost me more than I made, but I'd met Sada X and Funkmaster Flex and Akinyele. It was incredible. He just kind of spiraled. I think, and then after a while, I was writing so much for them that Andy was just like, do you want to come on as like contributing editor? It's not a staff role, but it basically means that you'll get a bit more money and you can write columns, and we'll guarantee you X amount of words. And I was like, oh hell yeah. I could write from morning till night on hip hop. It will never exhaust me. Yeah,
that's amazing. And that's where the passion kicks in, I think, is when you're just not in it for the money. It's just you're in it to have that Sadat X conversation. Do you know what I mean? And it's like that. Yeah. That's the level that you were operating at. And do you know what you said about persistence there, about like being rejected the first time? Just reading up like how you were with the rapping, it was like you've got that in you, ain't you? You just like, all right, what? Just gonna.
But the rapping was. I was wrong about the rapping. I didn't have it in me. I just thought I did, but I thought I'll keep knocking at that door till it's shut in my face.
Yeah.
I did feel with the hip hop writing. I was like, I've been reading Hip Hop Connections with issue 1. You've got some writers who over the years I really respected, like Vi Marshall and Malhu Halassa and all that. But I also know you print some writers that I don't think are any good at all, and then nobody I know reads it likes. I can definitely do this better than them. So you have to be persistent when you know that's the case, or you believe that's the case at least. As I did, like, no, I can do this. And I mean, personally, in all my career, I've written for lots of magazines, but I've never worked with an editor like Andy Cowan, who was so easygoing and responsive and trusting. Basically, if I pitched him something, I I think maybe once, maybe twice in 11, 12 years of writing for him, he said no. He would always say, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
You know, it might be me saying, oh, I'd like to do a 26-part A to Z of slang in hip-hop. And he'll go, yeah.
Amazing.
He never thought about it. He just went, yeah.
That's brilliant.
Because he knew I could deliver it.
Yeah.
And I think he handled his other writers the same. He would not say yes unless he knew you could do it and that you would make it engaging for the reader, and it was offered something a bit different than just a Q&A with a tired rapper, which a magazine can easily be, you know.
Yeah, and you know what? Talking about Andy Cowan there, like, if anyone hasn't listened, go back to our Hip Hop Connection podcast we had a few episodes ago with Andy Cowan, because it's the same with us though, mate. We were completely new out the gate. We have got no credence in this game apart from the fact we love hip hop. Yeah. We messaged him because we were like, we grew up on Hip Hop Connection. Yeah, I'm up for doing it. Yeah, let's go for it. And it was like, wow, for you to give us the time to do this, not knowing who we are, we could be awful. It was like, yeah, do you know what? I'm up for doing it, and the love was there, and I'm doubling down on the respect and big up for Andy Cowan because he's a good lad. And
he's also the least hip hop guy in hip hop ever.
Yeah, right. Wow. Yeah.
He's you would never guess in 1,000 years that he'd even heard a hip hop song if you looked at him. But that's again another reason I respect him. He's never tried to be something he isn't. He's just always been a very charming, witty guy to deal with. Yeah, was happy to go to his birthday a few years ago and see him, and see he's doing well. And I mean, for me, he's one of my kind of journalism heroes, but also a man who made a big difference to my life, in many ways.
Yeah, man, brilliant. So moving on, we were talking about, we like to talk to people about like their career highlights. For yourself, I do want to hear career highlights, but I also wanted to know, when you were at Hip Hop Connection and you were doing interviews and writing, which were the artists that you just loved either interviewing or writing about?
That's a really good question. I think the ones I've liked writing about, and like I say, just to go back to that previous point, I didn't often get turned down on a pitch. It would be somebody who wasn't quite getting their due shine, or I felt, this person needs to get covered. And obviously, I think, a few of us were heavily involved in the kind of raucous independent state era of hip-hop, and a lot of those people hadn't been heard. And it was like R.A. the Rugged Man, Talib Kweli, Mos Def. And they're not all artists that I revere today, to be honest, but, be the person who says, right, I'm the first to write about them. The first person to give, like, Sir Menelik a 2-page interview.
Yeah.
I don't think that was me. I think that was Mike Lewis, but I was on the same trip I was on. And, we'd fund these trips ourselves out of our own money just to try and, all right, let's go and cover this, or let's try and get some legends out. And sometimes it would just be pure luck. We'd go to New York and say, who's around? And then, one time we bumped into Godfather Don on the street outside his job. He's a children's clothing designer in his day job. And he was having a fag outside. And we were like, ended up going out for dinner with him, interviewing him, turned to a really nice piece. R.A. the Rugged Man was in the Raucous offices when we were there to interview Mos Def and Talib Kweli. And he missed his last train back to New Jersey. So we said, you can stay in our hotel room for the night, which is in Washington Square. He ended up sleeping in our bath. And we went out for the night, got drunk. We had a bit of wild time in Times Square back when it was still quite sleazy, and got an amazing story out of it. And it was stuff like that, people that would hang with you, or people that you felt you were like unearthing for the first time.
That's amazing. That story with R.A. the Rugged Man's brilliant. Was there any artist that when you saw, so you were trying to unearth diamonds and talking to people who now still are probably classified underground rap, was there anyone that you interviewed and just from the jump off you were like, that guy is going to be huge? Was there anyone that you predicted that and either it did happen or it didn't happen?
I was often wrong. I admit that. People I thought would never blow up that did. I mean, I always thought Jay-Z, I can't really see it. I mean, how wrong can you be? But yeah, I mean, Mos Def to a degree. I mean, like I say, I pretty much don't like many Mos Def records. I know he's a huge popular artist with a lot of people have a big passion for that. But, there's a reason we called his album Whack on Both Sides in Fat Lace. I thought I liked some singles, but I did think he'd be big. I was in the studio for recording of a couple of the tracks of that album, just by pure luck. We were in Raucous and they went, Mos is recording his album, do you want to drop by? And I think he had 88 keys producing in the studio, and me and Dan just got to sit on that, which, it's like, okay, we're there at what he seems a legendary album. Neither of us really like that album.
Oh my God, it's one of my favourite albums though. That's so mad. Yeah, but
it's
still.
Not amongst our favourite stories because it's just like we weren't that bothered. But I could tell right then. I'm like, right now, if he gets the right promotion and the right breakout record, I think he'll be like a mid-level underground star, which I think is what he became really.
That's interesting, Mos Def. Yeah, I mean, you've been writing there for a long time. So how many years were you in the magazine game? Roughly, how long you were in there for?
I'm going to say like about 12, 13, something like that. Maybe from about 93 to about 2004, 2005. I think it was only just the 10th anniversary of maybe Hip Hop Connection folding recently. So maybe even longer.
So right, so I was thinking you're probably in there for like a decade or so. I mean, within that time in the print industry, clearly now it's shrunk like completely to what it used to be. What do you now, as someone who's been in the game for like 10 years back in the day, what do you think about hip hop analysis now, hip hop profiles and journalism generally in rap at the moment? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I think, I'm never both in terms of music and in terms of journalism and writing, I never want to be one of these guys who's like, it's not the same anymore. But I do think the kind of idea that the internet is going to give us more and more choice and be more democratic is in many ways an illusion because you're still funneled into the same kind of areas. And I think that funneling has kind of cheapened hip-hop discourse to a degree. I think the thing in music journalism I really liked in print was that you had this kind of panoply of different voices. So at Hip Hop Connection, we went from taking ourselves quite seriously to them being quite silly and humorous. You had the fanzines, which obviously when I did Fat Lace, it was all jokes. Fat Boss was quite reverential and great design. And in America, you had The Source, which was quite politically engaged. Ego Trip. I just felt there was a wider range of voices, even in what is technically a smaller medium than the internet. And whereas I think the internet, it's almost the people who shout loudest get heard, and that's not necessarily good in terms of analysis. But also, I think, I'm not the audience for a lot of this stuff. That's the other thing. I mean, I'm the audience for someone who's going to write an 80,000-word book about Death Row Records or about the life of Eazy-E. I'm the audience, or about Houston Rap or Rakim's new book. I'm not the audience for a 400-word thing about a rapper who's just come out last week. I'll listen to the music, but I don't necessarily want to engage with it on that level anymore, and that's part of my aging. It's part of, I've got other interests now. I'm an older man. So I don't want to besmirch anybody, but I don't have my go-to writers anymore that I used to be passionate about reading either. I mean, and there are some really great writers out there. John Caramanicus still does really good stuff. Shout out Robbie at Uncut. When I used to read hip-hop blogs all the time when I worked 9 to 5, I always loved his stuff because he was passionate about the artists that I was passionate about. Chill Rob G and people like that, and Lord Alabaski, he cared about their stories and he brought that to life. But this is a very long-winded answer, isn't it?
No, it's really, I'm like engaged, I'm locked in. I'm like, God, yeah, that's really interesting because my reading habits haven't changed as much yet because this podcast's slowly taken over my life. I don't read as much as I used to, but I've got like You God's book sitting there. I want to reread the rap lists again because, it's just been too long since I've read the Ego Trip stuff. And obviously Rakim brought his book out right now. And it's interesting that you're saying that because I'm thinking that's probably where I'm going to head. When this chills out a little bit, I don't know if I'll be reading those first listen reviews or what is DaBaby's, legacy already. He's only been in the game for a few years, but it's like already there's these pieces, like these think pieces are already dropping because content's like the master of everything right now. Everyone needs content.
And we did lists and listicles in magazines quite often, but not with the same kind of relentlessness it happens now. There's been about 5 or 6 top 40s drop in the last, or top 5s or top goats or whatever in the last few weeks. And, and then people share them, people hate them, people say, people say, oh, you didn't choose this. And of course, people have a more, democratic response because they can respond to it, whereas in a magazine, you could write a letter in. And it might not get published, but the chances are it would never get seen. And you were just, just shouting into a bin, pretty much. But I mean, we did those lists, but you would take your time on it, and also it would be more about a writer's opinion. So, I would be prepared to write my top 10 Nas tracks and stand by it, and be prepared to be called, as I often was, hip hop's worst writer ever, or you wanker, or someone say, I totally agree. I feel now the kind of compiled lists, especially the one that the BBC had done this week.
I saw that. Yeah,
it's almost like a cop out. It's no one authoring it. I like to feel an authored article. That's what I like. I like to feel a writer's style. And I just felt like it was just like, oh, here's a list. I don't know what kind of people it asked. Some people respectable, some people I've not heard of, but again, that's an old man.
Sorry, Andrew, I was just going to say, but do you know what? The authorship of something, that now I find, just on a personal level, so I used to follow Stereo Williams a lot because he has his very in-depth takes on things. And then I realised, I don't read as much now, but because I'm listening to podcasts more, that kind of opinionated, like, it may not be lists, but it's just opinions on something, and you're bringing a sideways look into something I thought I knew something about. So, like, there's podcasts now that, like, the I think it's the Dad Bod Rap Pod, which are these.
Oh, yeah,
like,
that's good.
Yeah, and they always bring some insight into stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at that. And even though they're American, it's an interesting slant on what I also like. And I find that stuff in different kind of arenas now. It's not in a magazine anymore, or. Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating how it's all morphing and evolving, and we're trying to keep up with it, and we're just enjoying what we get.
Hey, yo, this your boy Foul March, and right now, you are rocking live with the Crate 808 podcast. Enjoy this week's episode, and just remember to subscribe and rate and review. Peace.
So just going back to your book, mate, you nailed it with this one line I had to read back to you, because I thought this is something I'm passionate about, and I'm glad that someone wrote it down so I can be like, yes, that someone else gets me. Do you know what I mean? And it was, you said, I've long harbored the dream of writing the definitive book on what rap music meant to white teenagers living nowhere in the 80s and 90s, about how it politicized them, how it stirred them from their apathy and got them interested in the impact of racism, poverty and social disenfranchisement. And I was thinking, wow, like, so I'm not a white teenager, but I was in a white environment completely as an Asian guy. And listening to that, I was like, oh my God, someone said it. Like, but seriously, I'm very left-wingish, especially as a kid who revolted about everything. And where do I get that from? Oh, it's because I listened to Public Enemy. And it's because, and you don't nail it when you're a kid, but it's in your 20s, you go, oh yeah, that's probably why I'm like this. So
you're totally right.
And when you wrote that really got me in the fact that, oh yeah, I am against like poverty and all that, because I hear people from poor places telling me how shit it is. Do you know what I mean? So just going into the book, I thought that side of it was great. But also, as we talked about the ridiculous side of things, as you were saying, I needed to go into a few of these bits, mate. And you say in the book, right, that your rapping voice is like the sound of a man lifting a fridge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So which are the best and worst voices in hip-hop for you? After reading that, I had to ask you.
Okay, well, first, just a little incidental detail. The guy who said that about me was my then boss, who had the glorious hip-hop name, this is his real name, of Rob Swift. I used to like telling him that there was a DJ with the same name as him.
That's amazing.
But also on that very same team, we had a 3-man team. Our designer on that magazine was AJ from Hard Noise.
Wow. Okay, look at that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Me and AJ have been friends ever since. We met at work. That's by the by. So the best voice, and I would also say one of the best rappers for me is Brother J, an incredibly underrated artist. Both X-Clan albums are amazing, but even when their second album's not brilliant, his voice is. I've never known a more authoritative voice. Is like Chill Rob G squared, incredible. Roxanne Shante, the first time I heard her, so I was probably 11 or 12, it was 84, 85, and I heard this kind of high-pitched female voice, and again, I think it's because it's something I'd never encountered on a record before. I was used to hearing singers, and smooth production, and hearing that kind of gutter Marley Marl production with her on top. Yeah. That's the voice that, I'm Shante, and around to I couldn't tell half what she was saying, because I didn't know what the slang was, but that voice has always stayed with me. So I love voices that are a bit unusual, but I don't like voices that are gimmicky. So like the whole kind of high-pitched rappers, or when, rappers did characters. So like Snagglepuss, remember Snagglepuss the rapper?
I don't remember Snagglepuss.
Your B-side artist, and gets like, he had a kind of a gimmick. Or Nine did a thing, Froggy Frog, didn't he, on some of his tracks?
Mate, I don't know. I've not heard him. Wow, Froggy Frog. Is that a character?
Froggy Frog, which is basically Nine, just like changing his voice a little bit.
Right. Okay.
My least favourite voice, and it's the only reason I don't like his music and haven't got into his career, is Jay-Z.
Really?
And I realise that's sacrilege for many people. I'm never going to be the person that says he's not good, he can't make a good record, he can't rap. I know he can. But there's sometimes, Guru had it right. It's mostly the voice. And at that stage when I heard Jay-Z, I was engaging with music more lyrically than I was when I first found it and than I am now. I'm more on the feeling now. But then I was totally into the lyrics. And if your voice annoyed me, I couldn't get past that. So I never got past that with Jay-Z.
Wow, that's
And I know
amazing.
that puts me in a kind of
You might be in a small sample group there for that.
but also it puts me in a group of people that I don't like to be in, which is the kind of the real hip hop brigade.
Yeah.
And the real hip hop brigade are the people who would never listen to a Tupac record or a Jay-Z record, or would just say they're obviously shit. Blah blah blah. I don't maintain that. I don't like Tupac either, but I admire the impact he made, his artistry. But I don't want to be one of those people that just says, "Oh, you're not a great artist because you're not super lyrical." I don't think you have to be super lyrical to be a great artist. I think some of the best rap artists aren't super lyrical, and the feeling gets you. But if you can't get past the voice as a rapper,
you can't. Yeah, exactly.
I find it hard to warm to a degree.
Just in a few words, could you explain what it is about Jay-Z's voice you don't like, though? Because I can't. I'm indifferent to his voice. He wouldn't be in my top 5, but he wouldn't be in my bottom 5. He's just kind of Jay-Z. He's never clicked with me on that level either. Of like, wow, listen to that voice. So I could kind of see what you're saying, but I'd love to just hear what you mean a little bit more about. What is it exactly, do you think?
Well, it's hard to compartmentalize it, because when I first heard him, years before the Dead Presidents came out, it was when he was Jazzo. He was down with Jazzo. And
yes.
He was like, and the Jazz and Jay-Z tracks, and, his appearance on Original Flavor and stuff like that. He was quite a gimmicky rapper, and he was doing quite a lot of triple and double timing and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that's actually a kind of rapping I think's aged really terribly. But I'd heard him and thought, oh man, he's got skills. And then when he came out, and I think maybe the first thing I heard was Ain't No John Terry. And and I hated that track so much. It, to this day, remains my least favourite hip-hop track of all time.
I'm so glad you said that.
Because it took a sample that for me is, I cherish it because of EPMD, and then turned it into a kind of back and forth track with Fox. I just hated it. And, I know people adore that track. My man Rob Percy loves that track. He's, on that, he's wrong. But...
I don't like that track either, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the voice was so different from what I was used to, and I realised that's a really irrational response. But sometimes music is irrational.
Exactly.
Sometimes you have a pet hatred for an artist, which you'll never overcome.
Which you just can't get past.
Can't get past it, and you know that you might be wrong. If you revisit them now, like the Smiths. I always hated the Smiths. I always hated. Oh God, there's too many to name.
I was going to say, should we go down that avenue? If you want to go down that avenue.
I think back then, I think when I first discovered hip hop, I was trying to find hip hop as something to be in opposition to something else with. Don't feel that now. I never sit here anymore going, I hate this artist. I hate that. It doesn't matter if they're brand new or an old artist brings something out. I just listen to it on the basis of, I'll give it a listen. Is it good? Do I like it? The hatred that kind of fueled my taste in my teenage years has totally disappeared.
Yeah, it does though, doesn't it? When you get older, you just feel like, I ain't got the energy. I have not got the energy to hate things anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like I would prefer to use the small amount of energy I do have now as an older man, prefer to use it into stuff that I like. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, that's it. But also, I think there's a really nice thing to do with your energy as you get older, which is reappraise things and enjoy them in a different way. I mean, I sometimes do a radio show with Rob Percy and Super Rich called The Regulator Show. They do all the time. I sometimes jump in as a guest. And we kind of like try and tackle kind of revisionism, which there's quite a lot of. And Robin's really good on this. He'll say, like, people don't talk about how big Cypress were because they're no longer cool. And that's very true. I think reappraising stuff is good fun. And reappraising stuff that's underappreciated or didn't get its shine at the time. And there's certain albums that, sold 2,000 copies in the 90s that sound better now than the ones that sold 400,000. That's not just because they're niche. I think just because of the way they're produced or the rapper's vocal style has just aged better. Whereas things that were really massive at the time because they were so fresh and new don't sound as fresh in retrospect. That kind of gimmick has aged.
Yeah. And you know what? That's absolutely right. What you guys are doing is very important in today because it's like history is written by the winners. Yeah, but the winners cannot be the real winners. Like, it's just because, you've either got the money, the backing, or the media platform to constantly barrage the younger generation about where you stand. Like, Jay-Z's career, for one, I remember as a kid and the real hip-hop grade not liking him and stuff like that. And that's not really talked about in the larger circles of people I work with who are a little bit younger than me, They're younger than me. I'm old. Yeah. They're younger than me. And it's like, oh, right, yeah. And you realise, oh, wow, like the way you look at Jay-Z is completely the way differently than I look at him. But yeah, no, that kind of thing, I'm here for that. Just going back to the 90s.
People rewrite history in ways that, if you weren't there, and I wasn't there in the Bronx in 1979, so I'm not going to try and rewrite that history. But I was there in the hip-hop clubs in the North in the 80s and late 80s, mid 90s, and I know what people listened to then. Now, I remember going to like some really rough clubs in Bradford, where the only places playing hip hop. The week that Criss Cross Jump came out, they were playing nothing but hardcore gutter hip hop, and they dropped Criss Cross Jump, and the place went crazy. And the same for House of Pain, Jump Around.
Yes.
Those were hardcore hip hop tracks, right up until the time they blew up worldwide.
Yeah.
Which everyone turned their back on them and went, "No, we never liked that."
Yeah.
You did. I saw you. You were there.
You were there jumping around.
They weren't student records then. They hadn't got to that crowd yet. It was
Yeah.
on import. It was £6.49 to buy the 12-inch of Jump Around. And the only people who had it were hip-hop DJs and super nerds. And it was blowing up in the hip-hop clubs. You know, not the big ones, the tiny gutter ones. You know, in Bradford and Huddersfield and rough parts of Leeds.
Yeah, yeah.
People like that stuff didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, I heard Ice Ice Baby in a hip-hop club before it hit the charts. And people were going, "Oh, that bass line's so dope." You know, people pretend this stuff didn't happen. And I'm glad someone like Robbie is kind of very vigilant on pulling people up on that stuff, and I kind of admire him for that.
Yeah, 100%. He talked to Outkast in one of our episodes, and he was, it's just really insightful to hear other people who, because you guys are a little bit older than me, I wasn't there for that, so it's nice to know that. Oh, okay, so I love Criss Cross, like, you know, that's what I grew up with. That was my first rap tape, so that was the thing I grew up with, was rap. That's what got me in, and I was like, wow. Then you go backwards, don't you? And then you get tarred by all this kind of other nonsense with it, I suppose. But you guys should release that as a podcast. Seriously, that sounds amazing. You should do that.
Me and Rob have had a few chats about maybe doing a podcast in the future, but we're not quite sure what we're going to do yet.
I'll do it. If you need a producer, mate, I'm here. Don't worry about it. I'll be in the
Appreciate
background. So going on into the book, as you, this is all coming from. This is what I mean. Go out there and read the book, man. These are the kind of conversations you end up having, because in there you mentioned one of my favourite MC names that no one else I know mentions. I got into UK hip hop very late via friends in London, and I don't know if you're going to guess the name I'm going to come out here with, but Hunt.
I am, yeah.
Go on, what do you think it is?
Huckleberry Finn.
Mate, what a name. What a name that is. And when I saw you reference that, I was like, oh my God, yes, flashback. What a name. I remember that time thinking Huckleberry Finn is one of my favourite rap names. So I need to ask you what your favourite MC names are, like, just generally.
Well, that is one of them. You know, I mean, I always loved a pun, and I you know, when I first discovered hip hop as well, that was also one of the exciting things to me. It was like Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force. What the hell?
Yeah.
You know, at the time I'm listening to Kenny Loggins, Footloose. You know, it's like, where did this go from? In all their space age garb as well.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, fresh 3 MCs, and it introduced words I've not heard before.
Yeah.
MCs I've not heard that word used before, and Grand Mixer. And all the kind of initials and the ices and the chills. I loved that stuff straight away. I loved anyone with Grandmaster in their name. You know, any record that came out, not Grandmaster Flash, anyone, the real Grandmaster, stuff like that. Wizard, Smooth Wizard in the title.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. So Huckleberry Finn was basically the first UK rapper I thought had a great name. I thought Overlord X had a great name. Because it's just so dramatic and, you know, braggadocious. But, I mean, my favourite is, like, a guy whose record probably sold 3 copies worldwide. It's a super obscure hip-hop track by a rapper called Aggressively Intense Fierce MC.
Aggressively Intense. Wow. How many times does he have to remind you of what kind of guy he is in one name?
Oh, I mean, you know.
Aggressive, intense, fierce.
Just brilliant. But I just love the, you know, a music where you could string together descriptive words like that, like raw dope posse. You know, you're not just a dope posse, you're not just a raw posse, you're a raw dope posse.
Yeah, yeah.
And words like imperial, you know, I'm Grand Imperial. I just found that stuff, like, I fell in love with the romance of that stuff, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, and when I was trying to name myself as a rapper in, like, the early 80s or mid 80s, you know, it was all that kind of, you know, I was MC Melody Ski for a while.
That's good.
You know, I was Cold Kid E. My DJ was Touche.
These are not bad names. These are pretty strong names. Pretty solid, mate.
Yeah, and then we had a crew called Risk, which was the Rhyme Imperial Strength Kings. And I think at that point I was just like, you know, looking up pop words on liner notes and going, I'll stick those together.
Stick those together. Risk. Oh, mate, so good. That's so good. But again, going on here though, you had to shred 1,000 words on because your book is quite dense, which actually it's very easy, like a very brisk read, but there's a lot in there. If you know what I mean, it's odd how to put that into words. But you said you had to shred 1,000 words on lyrics that you always get wrong. Now, I want to read that, mate, because I'm sure there's loads in there that I still get wrong. So have you got any that you really prize, that you think lyrics that people always get wrong?
Well, what I should have known as a writer and journalist is that you can't reproduce lyrics in a book without permission.
Oh.
And getting permission is really hard. So my first draft of the book had this massive long section. I did a little thread on with friends. I did a thread on Diggers with Gratitude Forum. Mm-hmm. What lyrics have you always got wrong? Collected it and thought, this is a whole chapter. This is absolutely brilliant. And then I started each chapter with a lyric that fit with the theme of the chapter. Only then did I consult the internet for the legalese on this and found that I couldn't do any of that stuff. it would be a nightmare that would probably cost me, more than I could ever hope to earn from the book in 10 lifetimes. So I had to shred all that stuff, and there's no point saying to people, I got these lyrics wrong, without telling them what the real lyrics are. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just had, I'm struggling to come up with examples that I didn't put in the book, because I tried to choose the very best ones. Yeah. But I did have dozens, and a lot of them were just people getting group names wrong. I've got a feeling it's either Rob or my man Super Ricks who thought that line about from Public Enemy was, we wear black Wranglers, they're ball stranglers. That was one that I really liked. But yeah, I'm struggling to come up with the one that I didn't use at the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine.
I'd have to dig through like the earliest manuscripts, because there's like 16 versions of the book.
Oh, so, God, wow.
So I kept rewriting it until I got it right. But I love that, and I still feel that today I'm finding out new ones.
Absolutely. Only the other day, someone at work mentioned to me an Outkast lyric where they talk about Anne Frank. And I can't remember what the fucking song was now, but there's a song and they were talking about like, oh yeah, I need to take you upstairs for 2 weeks and go in hiding like Anne Frank. So, oh my God, who's that? Oh, it's Outkast. It's Outkast on like a pop song. And you're like, there's loads of things. There's loads of things hidden in 90s rap, more than 90s rap. Just that you need to just go visit back. I swear, this book made me do that.
This morning, I was informing my fiance that in no uncertain terms we'll be playing Bits Marquee, Just a Friend at the wedding. And I was playing the video, and she was distinctly unimpressed, but it'll get played regardless. And there was a lyric in that. Watching the video, I clocked it for the first time, and I've heard that song 700 times. Mm-hmm. When I used to DJ friends' weddings or parties, I'd always play that. And I've heard all my friends had that at their weddings. I still heard the lyric just this morning. That was like, I've always said that wrong. I can't remember what it is now, but just
it always happens. It always happens though, doesn't it? Always happens. It's like, yeah, it's brilliant though when you have that feeling of, oh, right, I get it. Do you know what I mean? So you also say hip-hop is the most influential worldwide fashion movement in the last 30 years. I agree with that. But I need to ask you, what are the worst items of clothing you've ever bought?
Oh, man. I think I say this as well, that, I'm not from a well-off family, so I was always one of the kids who had the kind of cheap version of whatever was good. Yeah. So, when high-tech text came out in the 80s with their huge flappy tongues, all the breakdancers at my school had them. I got them after they'd all decided they were rubbish. They moved on to Puma suedes, and then my mum would buy me a pair because they'd been discounted to like £20. So I was always just that little bit late, or I'd have a knockoff version. So when I met Greenpeace, he was very much into wearing like the early kind of beef and broccoli Timberlands and stuff like that. Yeah. Whereas I'd go to the market in Leeds and get the £12 version that would fall apart. And and all the photos of the time are there's all these hip hop guys and all these rappers that we used to hang around with, and I'm kind of there in a kind of lumberjack shirt, zip up, lumberjack gilet, and the entire ensemble would have cost about £12. But I think the worst was I bought some baggy jeans, but they were the jeans that were kind of made. They were kind of pre-pin rolled. They came with a kind of built-in pin roll, and and they were bright green. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to wear green clothes too, like an idiot. And they just looked like early Hammer pants, mixed with something that you'd see Aladdin in a Blackpool pantomime wear. There was just no dignity in what I was wearing at all.
Oh, mate, bless you. Oh, that's great. It's actually got a little tear in my eye from that. Just getting that image in my head. That's great. But we've all done it, mate. We've all done it. I was there with my pants on the other way around when Crisscross came out. I was there, mate.
Oh, yeah.
We all did it. Another thing that you do mention in passing more was that you have a rabid passion for record collecting. You and your friends, really. You said something, you had like 4,000 records at one point, right?
I did, yeah.
So what's the furthest length you've been to buy a record like that?
Well, a few things. I mean, the first time I went to New York was purely to buy records. I was like 18, 19 years old.
That's
and it was
incredible.
purely because I wanted to go to record shops. I also wanted to go and knock on the office of the Source just to say, hey, hello, Source. Have you got anything to give me? But I mean, most of my kind of collecting adventures, because I live up north, I've been on the internet and just buying ridiculously extravagant records that I've never heard. Again, based off the name. If it's from a certain year and it's got Grand or Imperial or Majestic in the name, okay, I'll drop 400 quid on that. Even if it's not got a snippet on it. And invariably, these things disappoint.
Yeah.
But I think one silly thing I did was that I kind of thought, well, I kind of know what records are worth. I'm going to get into buying and selling records. I saw this kind of thing come up on eBay, which was like a kind of warehouse of records. So me and Greenpeace decided to buy it together, and we had to get it freighted over from America. And I think it was something like 16,000 records.
Wow.
And we thought, well, it's all hip hop. There's got to be some gems in here. And how wrong can you be? I don't think I kept a single one myself, and I don't think Greenpeace did either.
No.
We sold them all individually on eBay, and I think we made a loss because we had to hire someone to list them for us.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Weirdly, the person who listed them for us was then Dan's assistant, and she's now the producer for Florence and the Machine.
You know what? I don't think I think you guys have had an instrumental hand in her career. I think something in there broke her, and she was like, "I'm not doing this again. I'm not listing 16,000 records. I'm going to produce Florence and the Machine."
That's it. I think after she'd listed her 14th copy of the promo of Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison. Because that's what it was. There was like 20 copies of each record, and they were all kind of 99p promos. There was not anything valuable in there.
Yeah.
And she had to list them all for us and send them out and post them. Oh God, the poor girl. And we broke her. We broke the machine.
We broke the machine. Well, you live and learn, don't you, Andrew? You live and learn. That's the thing. So I knew there'd be a good answer to that record question. I had to ask, and I never thought it'd be 16,000, but there we go. So go on to some of our staples we ask on the podcast, all of our guests. We need to ask you, what are your top 5 MCs?
Okay, so my list will be familiar. It's not got any weird selections.
Okay.
My favourite rapper of all time is Rakim, because, I got into hip-hop in 84. He came out in 86, 87. And he did something that no other rappers were doing at the time. Mm-hmm. This was when I was at my most easily influenced. So he's always stuck with me. And, when I say favourite, I don't like his solo albums at all. I know you had the debate recently about one of them. The debate no one asked for, I believe you called it.
The debate no one asked for, we did it. Yeah, we went with 18th letter.
That's what it's all about. What it's all about. Sometimes it's just a joy to discuss these things.
Yeah.
But Rakim, because, just for like my melody alone is enough to kind of cement him as me. Yeah. Chuck D, who really gets in these top 10 lists because his voice is incredible, his forcefulness, his subject matter, what he personally meant to me as inspiration. To this day, my musical hero. I don't always agree with what he says, but he does it in a way that I think has dignity, which a lot of rappers don't have as they get older. Which brings me to my third choice, KRS-One.
Oh God! God, we need to talk.
Because it's hard to kind of ignore how amazing his first 4 or 5 BDP albums were, and how brave they were lyrically and sonically, and how he reinvented himself a few times. And he kind of went off the boil in the end and started talking nonsense and talking about I am hip hop. But I liked his conviction, and again, an amazing voice. Big Daddy Kane.
Oh, big, yeah.
I know, just because he was the first one. I remember struggling to keep up with his lyrics. When I heard Raw for the first time, and I'm in that bedroom with my hairbrush. I'm I'm going to have to rewind this. I can't keep up with this, you know, and just the speed of him and incredible charisma and also great songs.
Yeah.
You know, he made so many great songs. It's a short career he had if you think about it. I mean, I know he's still going, but for number 5, I struggle. It changes from day to day, you know. Sometimes it's Andre 3000. You know, when people debate his inclusion on the list, I'm like, have you heard 16? You know, the guy's amazing. You know, have you heard 80 Aliens? He's amazing. But equally, it might be Brother J. It might be Master Race, who I think's had the greatest long career in hip hop.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you know, Master Race never disappoints. For me, he's never made a bad album. He made very different albums as well. He's prepared to challenge himself and do concept albums. Yeah, and I'll have forgotten somebody, you know, Eric Sermon, when in early EPMD, that voice would always kill me. You know, that smooth flow.
Yeah, definitely.
And Guru never crops up, but Guru's voice and paired with that production, which enhanced his voice. You know, that was for me. The genius of Premier was always working in tandem with Guru and enhancing his voice. He'd do a little interlude like Stay Tuned, which was so low key. And Guru would like ride it mellifluously with his voice, and then he'd come on something with like the sharp horns, and then a storytelling. He was a really, you know, distinctive MC. Yeah. Like yourself, I've got a drunken Guru story.
Go on.
I'm saving it for the second book because the second book is about interviewing rappers.
Brilliant.
Stories. So I'm gonna save that story for that book, but it involves a very drunken Guru as well.
Okay, so it's an interesting top 5 that you got there, mate. Because I did expect a little bit more left field, but it's interesting that those are formative. They seem very formative MCs that you picked there.
That's it. You know, I mean, and also there are also some rappers who I loved, but I think I go off them because, especially if they try and outlast their career. I think Kool G Rap outstayed his career by a good couple of albums, and that tarnishes for me his early career then. Ice Cube's first 3 solos are incredible. But again, by the time you get to War and Peace, I'm like, just call it a day. Get back to the films. You know? And
that's really interesting that you think of it that way, because my brain's wired a little bit differently in the fact that I suppose it's more today because we can pick and mix like tracks and make playlists kind of thing. So like one of my top MCs may become even more solidified because I don't have to listen to that album, and then I think I probably forget it. So like War and Peace, you're right, is not good, and then like Ice Cube's not in my top 5, but it gets to that point where now, because I listen to a lot of Predator now, I listen to a lot of the early albums, it's interesting that in my mind I don't even consider their career as much. It's a bit like rock heads, you know, talk about Pink Floyd or whoever, you know, back in the day, Led Zeppelin. They never talk about the later David Gilmour stuff that might not be that great. They talk about those classic albums to begin with. I feel like me with hip hop at the moment is getting through that stage where I'm kind of forgetting the kind of foibles of like some of the frailties of some of the artists I love, which maybe I need to be reminded about more. Maybe
that's a good point. I mean, and I know I've just done it. I've just given you a top 5, but I generally don't do that. Because I think, as you said earlier, those things can shift quite easily day to day. It could be based on what you've just listened to that week. Yeah. You know, I could put a Beatnuts album on and think Juju's such a great lyricist because he's got an amazing voice and just brutal gun lyrics like nobody else. Or I could listen to, you know, the first Clips album and straight away I'm thinking of them. When I've been asked in the past, will you contribute a top 5 or get into a debate on a Twitter thread, I don't do a top 5 because I just think, it's going to change. It's going to change by tomorrow. The places are going to shift around. The one thing that never changes for me is that Rakim is my favourite rapper of all time. Just because he did 4 back-to-back albums with Eric B. that for me stand the test of time and were inspirational at a time when I was discovering hip hop and was you know, easily swayed. Yeah, man. And that, you know what? That's the thing. It's what you just said there about like I should have made a disclaimer at the beginning. I usually try to, but these things shift. Like every hip hop head knows, you can't have a solid top 5. Like you might have 1 or 2, but really the other 3 change a lot. So if we do move on to the next staple that we had. What artist do you think, what 90s artist has aged the best since the 90s, and which 90s artist aged the worst? Okay, well going on the first one, I'm going to go a bit more left field, and I'm probably going to I might even copy an answer that Rob might have given you, Rob Percy. It's those underappreciated albums that you didn't really bump a lot of the time, maybe because they didn't get a lot of distribution, or maybe just didn't sell much or get reviewed, and you visit them later and spend time with them and go, this sound has matured beautifully. So recent examples of that, there's a couple of albums by the Boogie Monsters, which I don't think I bought until the 2000s, came out in the 90s, and they stand up wonderfully.
Who are I don't think I've ever heard of the Boogie Monsters.
Boogie Monsters, yeah, they had a couple of albums. Yeah, I'm really surprised Rob didn't mention him because I know he was that. But stuff like the Fondland Juggernauts, that stuff has aged brilliantly.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's like Poor Righteous Teachers. Their stuff has aged really well because it's not gimmicky. It's really strong voices.
Yeah.
The production is deep, and there's nothing that kind of jars in a way that kind of 92, 93 sound that was very like Onyxy and in the clubs.
Yeah.
And everyone doing the kind of 93 dance.
Yeah, yeah.
That stuff has aged quite badly. The kind of Timbaland music has aged badly, I think. Just an opinion.
Yeah,
especially the albums don't stand up as listening experiences. Whereas the stuff that's a bit more jazzy, a bit more melodic, or a bit more contemplative has lasted better for me.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. The more melodic hip-hop has definitely lasted better. Like jazz, I hate to say that one word 'cause it's not all jazz, is it? But funky soul, jazz, like hip-hop, it just, for me as well. It's just something I listen to more now. Maybe
A Tribe Called Quest has aged beautifully.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You played their first 3 or 4 albums back to back. There's nothing that jars. There's nothing that takes you out of that zone. It sounds wonderful. Whereas something a bit muddier, like Black Moon's debut, which I love that album, I think it's showing its age a bit because the sound's muddy. It doesn't vary much from track to track. The drums sound nice and crisp. The snares are great. But, because it's that deeper bass on it, I find that stuff hasn't aged as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, mate. I'm with you. I'm glad we have a similar ear for that. So just to finish up, really, we just wanted to ask you a few things here on, like, we talked about your Wiggers with Attitude book a lot, but you have got another book out, the Book of Hip Hop Cover Art, which is a fantastic table book just to have there and just go through hip hop art. It's amazing. So I would like to know, like, some of your favourite hip hop cover art, and on the other side of that coin, the worst cover art.
Well, this is a good question. I should have a ready-made answer because at the time of writing the book, obviously I was buried to my neck in them, but also I wrote quite a few articles off the back of the book for like The Guardian and various music magazines, highlighting the best and worst. But weirdly, my tastes have changed. The ones that I thought the worst at the time, so I wasn't a big fan of most of the records that had the pen and pixel covers.
Yeah.
The thing is now, I adore those covers, and I got into the music very late, I'll admit, but I like a lot of that music now. So, I used to point, make jokes about the Big Bear album. Do you know that one?
Yeah.
That's, but I love that album now. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, the cover's amazing.
The cover's incredible, but the music's pretty good as well. And a lot of that stuff, Mr. Servon, all the stuff that was like all the Suave House records, Easy Appetite and the Source, with, silly covers, and now I'm like, that stuff's genius. It's an art form in its own. It took the book in an entirely different direction. At the time, I was into the kind of the jazz influence covers, so like the Beatnuts EP with the kind of Hank Mobley swirl that they used from, because it was the Blue Note book that inspired me to do the hip hop cover art book. And it was at the time when a lot of rappers were not only sampling Blue Note music but using that kind of art style. Like the Cantaloupe cover was obviously a Blue Note takeoff. I mean, it was on Blue Note, but it's harking back to their kind of vintage style. So I love that stuff. But the stuff I really adore, that's aged really well, is stuff where people are wearing kind of anachronistic sportswear from the 80s. Where you've got a big posse shoe and they're not all wearing the finest trainers. They're all wearing Gola or something like that.
Yeah.
Or weird, or you're looking at it going, what the hell sneakers are those? I've never seen those.
Something just a little bit left field. I love that.
Yeah, if you look at Chuck D's sneakers on the Public Enemy covers, he used to wear, was it Avia? Or something like that, and it's like seeing a modern day rapper, because they've all got their own range of Jordans or whatever. It's like seeing them wearing, a pair of Onitsuka Tigers or, some Simmons.
I love that. That's great. I need more of that. Can someone please do more of that, please? That's great. So, Andrew, first of all, thank you for coming on, man. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. It's an honour.
And just wanted to say as well, for the last decade in hip hop culture, because we talk about the 90s obviously in this podcast, but what were your thoughts, like the last decade of hip hop culture? I'd just like to hear if you had any favourite artists or albums that you may have heard from this last 10 years, because 2020 obviously coming up, and if what your thoughts were generally on where the whole culture's going generally.
I mean, like I say, I'm not a real hip hop person in that regard, in that I know what I like, and a lot of the stuff I like is stuck in the 90s, but what I don't like is kind of hip-hop culture that tries to recreate the 80s and 90s now. I think there's no point, there's nothing to be gained from that. Hip-hop is big enough and broad enough now for us to have R.A. the Rugged Man or Jedi Mind Tricks or whoever, or Homeboy Sandman, but also also to have Migos and to have The Baby and Lil Nas X. You know, the world is big enough to enjoy all those things. So for me, I take more of a kind of dip in and dip out approach now. I'm a big fan of Chance the Rapper. I like Anderson .Paak. There's still a few people at vintage age that I will listen to their stuff because I think they're good at it. Master Race being a case in point. I like Dre's last album, Compton, you know.
Yeah, it's great.
I don't take a blanket, it's not what it used to be, because I think the key thing I keep in mind is I'm not what I used to be. I'm a different person. I approach music at 46 a lot different than I did at 11. As I think a lot of us do, we change. And it doesn't mean it's not as passionate, you just appreciate it in a different way. I'm kind of sad that I no longer have that kind of Saturday morning meet up with friends to go and buy the latest records. That's what defined my hip-hop love for me, was doing that. That kind of culture doesn't really exist a lot anymore in hip-hop terms. That single buying culture, that's what I do miss. But hip-hop evolved. Had already evolved by the time I got into in 84. You know, electro was very different from disco rap. And it changed again by the time Run DMC came out. And it changed again with Public Enemy. So constant change in hip-hop, I don't care, because I'll always find something that I love. There's always a record out that I love.
That's real wisdom there, Andrew. Real wisdom. Seriously. Like, I think you've got it in your book, actually. It sums it up really well. I had this excerpt I pulled out. It says, hip-hop is as alive right now as it ever has been. You could even call it a golden age if, sorry to hark back, the name wasn't already taken. And that's, do you know what I mean? That's true. And that's because the nature of hip-hop's DNA is not fixed. It's like something that multiplies and mutates, leaving hybrids all over the place. And that is nailed it. Absolutely nails it. And I'm with you, mate. I'm with you. And this real hip hop gauge you guys use, isn't it? And those guys, like, I think they might speak like on Twitter now, mate. I'm not sure if I see many of them in real life, but people around me have kind of morphed into more accepting. Like you said there, Homeboy Sandman, someone who only talked about 90s, if they listen to a bit of Homeboy Sandman, are actually like, oh, hold on a minute, I actually really enjoy this. And it's really interesting how there's something for everyone.
This is it. I mean, I think the thing is, people are allowed to like what they like. So if your real hip-hop man only wants to listen to a certain mid-90s sound, he's within his rights. But don't try and tell us that that's the only thing that hip-hop is, because you don't get to decide. And don't try and spoil it for the rest of us, and also for lots of other people. Today's 11-year-old discovering hip-hop might find it as mind-blowing as I did, but they'll be doing it in an entirely different way. But that's great, because it's all about the passion for the music. It's not about preserving something the way it was when you first discovered it. I think I've got my memories of 1984 that I treasure. I do not want hip-hop now to sound like 1984 hip-hop.
Yeah.
You know, because what I loved about hip-hop then was that it was changing, that it was radical. And, you know, the fact that a Little Yachty track doesn't sound like Fresh 3 MCs is fine by me, you know, because why the hell should it? I don't control what hip-hop should sound like, you know.
Exactly, man, exactly. And on that bombshell, I shall let you get about your day, but not before you tell me two things, mate. First of all, have you got anything to plug? You said there might be a new book coming out there.
Well, I'm currently writing 5 books.
5 books.
One of which is a sequel to Wiggers, title to be decided, but it's basically about the hip hop journalism years.
Oh yes.
So it's a lot about the industry. It's a lot of stories, some of which have been told, some of which haven't been told, some of which are libelous. But most of the rappers involved are dead. So there's that. I've written a couple of children's books, which I'm not ready to publish yet, which are hip hop related.
Brilliant.
And I've got an idea for what would be possibly the biggest hip-hop book ever written in terms of word count. But until I can find a publisher, I'm not going to write it. So maybe that's one for the next time.
Wow. I think 5's enough, isn't it? 5's enough to keep you going, isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
Throw in the novel and the book I'm collaborating on with a friend, and there's a lot of work to do. But
wow. But
the thing to watch out for is that there is a TV show of Wiggers kind of in development.
What?
I sold the option on the book. It's at script stage. We've got some great writers on it, some good people behind it. It hasn't been picked up yet, but there's a channel very interested, and we're just like revising the script for them. So
that is incredible, Andrew. That would work.
Yeah, well, the people who've picked it up have read the book, firm believers in it, and they want to capture the kind of essence of it. They don't want to turn it into a kind of mainstream hip-hop show, you know, so they've I'm not writing it, but I'm consulting on it, and you know, fingers crossed, but most TV things never come to fruition. But if that does, I'm super excited.
Smash cut to Andrew, head in hands, as everyone around him makes this something he doesn't want. And he's like, oh God, no, this is my baby. You're killing my baby.
I mean, the scripts are all quite different from what's in the book, but you know what? They're writing it. It's their baby now. I just literally say things like, Paperboy didn't come out that year on the Spectrum. It's the year after. I'm just there for that detail now.
Consultant. The Paperboy Spectrum consultant. Can I ask one thing then? When they are casting DJ David Batty, can I please just come to the audition? I need to know who this guy is going to be. DJ David Batty.
Greenpeace wants to play him. He says if he can't play himself, he wants to play David Batty.
Oh, so, perfect. Yes.
That might be my cameo if I get one. I'll be David Batty.
Oh, mate, absolutely brilliant. I can't wait for that. That's great. Yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to all that stuff. It should be wicked. It's really good.
Thanks, man. It's been really great to talk to you. I love the podcast, man. I'm a big fan.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And before you go then, last one. What's the last great piece of music you heard? Could be old, could be new, but just the last thing that you heard.
Oh, man, that is a really, really tough one.
Oh, no, really? Sorry.
Do you know what? No, it's not. It's not. I listened to an album that I hadn't listened to for ages of a day, which was the first Victor Vaughan album.
Oh, what an album.
And that album is, after Operation Doomsday, it's his best solo. It's better than Food, better than anything else he did. It stands up brilliantly, the lyrics on it, and I was playing Vaudeville Villain, the track, and Lick Upon, back to back, for about 2 hours just going, and this shit knocks. This is hard.
Yeah. Is it Saliva on that album? Something like that. There's another track on that album that's amazing as well, but Lick Upon is amazing. Yeah. Okay, that's a great answer, mate. That is a great answer. So just before we go then, thank you everyone who's listening. Thank you, Andrew, for coming on. Please catch us on crate808.com for all the social platforms and catching up on our Instagram, etc. Shout out Grindhouse Music for doing all the music for us. He's a legend. Andrew, just wanted to say as well, thank you for doing this. When you do make your books, when you get books come out, please, mate, the doors are open for you to come out here and just read us a few excerpts. We'd love to hear that.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. Cheers, man. Peace.
Thank you, man. Cheers. Peace.